Developed by KOEI TECMO, Monster Rancher, also known as Monster Farm, is a Japanese media franchise that includes a handful of video games, trading cards, manga, collectible toys, and a brief television show. With both its cutesy and terrifying monster designs, a yellow mascot monster named Suezo, and the storage of these monsters in disc stones, this franchise looked to rival the likes of Pokémon from its inception. And if you know the premise of my videos or have never heard of Monster Rancher until now, then you will know that this never happened. In fact, Monster Rancher as a franchise has a stagnant amount of properties when not only comparing to Pokémon, but the Burger King equivalent that rivaled Pokémon around the same time, Digimon. In fact, Digimon still has continuing TV specials, movies, games, and other merchandise distributed worldwide. So, we are essentially left with a franchise that could not be second fiddle, nor the third to stand in the monster battling / training simulator titans that mainstream still recognize today. And yet, like the lore of the rising phoenix destined to battle the Monster Rancher's ultimate antagonist, Mu, this franchise is still given life. Not by a multi-million-dollar company, nor by a passionate room of game developers or showrunners, but the fans, who continue to play, collect, and breathe life to Monster Rancher. The hows and the whys are what we will be exploring as we take a few dives on the Monster Rancher's medias, from the perspective of the fans. Now, it's time to be transported to a faraway Facebook group, to a world where ranchers rule. The Monster Rancher Forever group is where I found most of the information, viewpoints, and community interactions of more than 700 members, and appears to be one of the more prominent spaces of the ranchers. Given the scope and multiple mediums of the Monster Rancher franchise, we will start with what the fans saw when it came to the 90s TV anime that accompanied the release of the first two Monster Rancher video games. Released in 1999 in Japanese television, an English version would later air episodes on both the Sci-Fi Channel and Fox Kids. I first got into the Monster Rancher through the anime when it first premiered. I didn't play the games for a few more years. At the time, it had a much darker and in-depth story than most other shows of its time. I think that's what really drew me in. A lot of shows were either tournament-based or repetitive storytelling. Monster Rancher had plot twists, darker story arcs like Grey Wolf and Tiger, and sometimes the good guys didn't always win. I was always on the edge of my seat. With a total of 73 episodes, the anime had 3 seasons and was short-lived. But from reposts of full episodes on the Monster Rancher Forever group, references and art inspired from the show, it clearly held for some, but not all. I watched the show on TV and programming block immediately following Pokémon and Digimon. I remember thinking it looked like a horrible ripoff, and I was never really excited about the show in particular. Love it or hate it, the anime was for some their first deep dive into the world of Monster Rancher, which meant from watching monsters to playing with them on a game console. KOEI TECMO being a video game company, the game library of Monster Rancher may not rival the likes of Pokémon or Digimon, but it certainly was a game series that most of the fans remember as a huge point of their childhood. Monster Rancher was actually one of the first games I ever played. I had a brother-in-law that introduced me to Monster Rancher when I was really young. At first he played and I watched. He was about college age and I was yet to be in kindergarten, but then he gave me his old PlayStation with the Monster Rancher game. I saw a copy of Monster Rancher 2 for rent in my local convenience store and remember thinking, oh cool, there's a game about the anime, where in reality the first 2 games had released before the anime tie-in. I went to Hollywood Video, which is similar to Blockbuster, and I had rented everything I wanted in the past, but this time I saw something different. Monster Rancher 1 for PS1. It looked cool and I tried it out, and I've been a fan since, which is probably 23 years. From what I gathered from fans, the allure of the video game also came from its vastly different mechanics and gameplay from the competition. Monster Rancher is like the world's most complicated Tamagotchi or Chow Garden, except you get to see them fight. The way you create new monsters is by putting your CDs in your PlayStation, which then reads a bit of data and makes a monster based on the code it reads. Because of this, there is real-world scarcity, as some monsters exist only on very rare and/or discontinued pressing of certain CDs. You can also combine your monsters, so imagine you could combine Pikachu and Bulbasaur to get a brand new Grass-type Pikachu with its own stats and attributes. There's also over 400 monsters in Monster Rancher 2 alone because of these combos. As for the games, Pokémon can be very repetitive, while Monster Rancher has their own concepts in each game. Pokémon is also a collecting monster style game. Pokémon level up through the battles to evolve. With Monster Rancher, you can actually train your monster in different stats, learn specific skills, and even combine two monsters to make a new offspring. The thing that really set Monster Rancher games above the rest for me, though, is the different summoning techniques. You can use CDs, DVDs, Game Boy games, art, voice, passwords, and more throughout the games. The disc change feature was very fun for its time because not many games did this. Monster Rancher was more about the raising of your monsters than anything, and that helped you feel like the monsters were real. You watched as your monsters grew stronger from working, you sent them on adventures, and watched as they rested. Your monsters' attitudes changed on how you raised them and responded to praise and scolding. You still had battling, but the focus was on how you raised your monster. Pokémon is nice because you can have a world to explore, but it's hard to feel as attached to the Pokémon. They've tried to remedy with having Pokémon follow you, or by adding minigame-like events to interact, but it always fell flat. With Pokémon, some Pokémon were just naturally stronger, and they never could really leave the mold of their base stats. Monster Rancher allowed you to pick your favorite monsters and make them stronger. So the short answer, Monster Rancher is better than Pokémon at getting you to bond with creatures inhabiting their game worlds, while Pokémon fleshed out their world more but as a battle simulator. Of course, subsequent Monster Rancher games helped to make the world more fleshed out, and the adventures were always more fun in my opinion, since it was really about exploration rather than getting from point A to point B. Even the battle systems are different. Pokémon is a turn-based battle system, whereas Monster Rancher is more real-time battling. You give commands as your monster is being attacked. A misattack is when you or your opponent dodges. You can see your monster moving around instead of a static animation. Yeah, they still have repeated attack animations, but actually seeing your monster dodge an attack is truly amazing. With the original and second game being fan favorites, the innovation and sense of growth in raising your monsters not only created lots of memories, but an appreciation that has organized and housed tournaments and streams by fans for fans. Nash Bussieres is a streamer and rancher with the longest running and largest English language Monster Rancher 2 tournament series, Moose Bones on Twitch, as well as also having a small YouTube channel where he uploads lessons and video essays about Monster Rancher gameplay and competitive viability of different monsters in Monster Rancher 2, Mr. Moosebones on YouTube. Monster Rancher is my favorite game of all time. I really enjoy competitive Pokemon and have been playing in tournaments and simulators since 2001 when I was 11. Monster Rancher adding a real-time element to the competitive side of things adds an exciting level of stress and intensity that isn't available in Pokemon. While the better monster usually wins, anything can happen in a Monster Rancher battle, and I think that's a big part of why the scene is so loyal. There's also a sense of connection with your monster, as raising a tournament-ready monster can take up to 12 hours of gameplay, so people really internalize the wins and losses. It's like nothing I've ever been a part of before. With a healthy and competitive community, albeit one with maybe less than a quarter of players compared to Pokemon games, future games of the Monster Ranchers were far less favorable, as well as TECMO failing to deliver or provide a clear communication with their fans from the West, being clipped by their fans of the East, as Nash would explain. The series was always about 1/10 the size overseas as it was in Japan sales-wise, so while I'm disappointed that the series is most likely dead, I don't fault them for going too hard on marketing over here. The company has a history of actively disdaining its fans in an attempt to gain wider commercial appeal. There's a popular story in the scene about where Monster Rancher Evo was starting development, where a community figurehead met with a designer so the dev could ask about what fans wanted in a new game. The list of fan asks included no heavy narrative, sim-like gameplay, and a return to the battle mechanics of Monster Rancher 3 and before. Monster Rancher's 4 battle system is incredibly broken. While the game has many fans, it can be a very frustrating experience even casually. Some mechanics do not even work, and there is very little differentiation in the availability of battle playstyles between all monsters. None of these elements are present in EVO, and the game radically overhauled the Monster Rancher formula. It is extremely narrative-driven and does not play like any previous Monster Rancher game, neither in the battling or raising experiences. While EVO has fans, the game was a monumental failure overseas, only selling about 20,000 copies total, and burning a lot of fans who felt like they were actively being ignored. It didn't feel like TECMO cared about the fans. Despite the last official Monster Rancher game releasing outside of Japan and the United States in the early 2000s, these fans and communities can't get enough, and are willing to wait for their next adventure, even if it means watching others enjoy their annual Pokémon game here or there. Monster Rancher talks about licensing and testing. The dreaded paperwork exists. You still have amazing creatures that just seem more fit for being real for the most part. The lore in-game shows how such beings came to be and feels more realistic. Overall, the experiences all felt vastly different despite core elements being similar. It just happens that I prefer Monster Rancher to any other monster taming game. So I wasn't sure where to put this part of the documentary, but Nash definitely brought this to my attention as one of the lowest points of a forgotten fandom that I've yet to highlight: wiki misinformation. As most fan bases grow, they may have official or unofficial wiki pages dedicated to the lore, established canon, and other pertinent information that is consistent, organized, and accessible for anyone to read and understand. Unfortunately, this was something that Monster Rancher, along with its fledgling community, have had problems with. When I was younger, I used to read Monster Rancher Metropolis, a website that served as a dedicated wiki long before the concept was widespread. I learned a ton about the game's insane hidden mechanics and watched old tournament footage. This was pre-YouTube. Monster Rancher Metropolis, in its current form, serves as an archive database, where ranchers can continue to delve into hidden mechanics and secrets to most of the mainline games, but no longer exists aside from a few archives of links here and there, as well as the shuttering of its message boards. Nowadays, most fans or curious-minded folks like me would have thought typing in Monster Rancher Wiki would bring me to the source of all things Monster Rancher, as dictated by editors and contributors to the fanbase. Nash had a few choice of words on this particular wiki. Almost the entire site is fan fiction with no actual gameplay info, and while there's no harm in having a site like that, but it becomes really irritating when it claims to be an authority. When people read it and parrot falsehoods and stuff that someone made up for fun, it always feels like a time sink to explain why what they're reading is wrong. There isn't a lot of drama in the scene, as everyone who is a fan knows the wiki is nonsense, but it's the closest we've come to having a real contention. One can imagine that contentions like these are absent in larger groups of fans when it comes to wiki pages. Thankfully, the fans and curious alike can rejoice that the love and dedication from the community has managed a new information for all things Monster Rancher in LegendCup.com. As their website states, LegendCup.com 2001 and Monster Rancher Metropolis 1999 are unofficial Monster Rancher fan sites with permission from TECMO Incorporated, now KOEI TECMO. Legend.cup.com was also registered as MonsterRancherOnline.com for about 10 years during the peak of tournament participation. Learn to raise powerful monsters with 999 in every stat, even without cheating. Here you'll find raising tips and methods, tech charts, monster data breakdowns, expedition maps, downloads for Dex Drive/Sharkport game saves, monster pictures from all games on the PlayStation and PlayStation 2 consoles, and more. If you're feeling nostalgic, view the archives of the first ever Monster Rancher online tournaments, picture of tournament monsters and trainer standings. Additionally, you can check out the comprehensive research data of the historic Monster Rancher Metropolis message board archive. Happy exploring! Finally, we have arrived to the trading cards. After all, no franchise really seems completed without them. With Pokémon cards having gained a resurgence in value, nostalgia, and popularity the last few years, one can imagine the scarcity of a competitive or collecting scene for the Monster Rancher trading card game. Enter Daniel Garner and Andrew George, admins of Monster Rancher Forever. Andrew has made it one of his objectives to revitalize interest in the Monster Rancher card game, while Daniel has several tutorials and deck building strategy videos on the card game created and uploaded to his YouTube channel, Pro Zach. Andrew is not only spearheading several projects such as Monster Rancher manga translations, he has been busy with unofficial card game expansions for the card game itself. This includes recreating the original card patterns and creating either new monsters or monsters that were not in the card game originally. I love the simplicity of the card game versus stuff like Pokemon, Magic, and Yu-Gi-Oh! I love those card games too, but they've gotten so complicated and technical, but the Monster Rancher card game is nice and simple, while still being addictive. I have all of the cards for 4 different card games. I still rewatch the anime, play the games, and currently am expanding their main card game with more monsters from their games. You can find all of their hard work on the description of the video below with links to the Google Drive from Andrew's card game expansions, as well as Daniel's YouTube page on the card game tutorials. As we have seen from each portion of the Monster Rancher franchise, the fans may all like or may not be aware of certain pieces of this franchise. From the card games to the video games, the passion for all things Monster Rancher from its fans is palpable, despite their ups and downs. And like any forgotten franchise, the fans know all too well on why it never really hit the peak of a mainstream audience. Pokémon is a well-known titan of monster taming games, and often it causes people to think every monster taming game is just trying to piggyback off of Pokémon, and things like your monster dying could cause people to be leery of purchasing the game. Monster Rancher 2 is the best-selling game in the series, and it is excruciatingly difficult if you don't know how the game works. Part of its cult following is seated in that difficulty and reward for a job well done, but it also served as a tipping point. While I can only speculate what happened later, the games that would follow waver between incredibly easy and very difficult / grindy. I think a big part of why it failed was fans never knew what to expect with the next game, not only from a difficulty level, but also from a gameplay and character design standpoint. Pokemon and Digimon's strengths lie mostly in their very strong character design. Even through multiple iterations and 25 years, Bulbasaur still looks like Bulbasaur. Monster designs differ wildly between games. Dragon in 1, 2, and 3 might as well be their own breeds, and with no stylistic throughline, the games never really permeated public consciousness. At the time, Monster Rancher was a much darker show than others like Pokemon. During this time, many children animes were being dubbed and cut for televising. Shows like Monster Rancher that were darker would be put in worse viewing slots early in the morning. This most likely was the main reason many didn't know it existed. Furthermore, the games were not promoted very well. I think if they were to relaunch the anime uncut on a streaming service, much like Shaman King and Cardcaptor Sakura, they would get a much better following. Honestly, I have a hard time saying. It had 3D battle games before Pokemon ever did, it had an anime that was actually pretty decent to be honest, and a physical trading card game in Japan, as well as lots of spin-off titles. So it had just as many chances to succeed as Pokemon or Digimon. I suppose it was just bad timing. Kids were overrun with monster-raising anime and games at the time that I think Monster Rancher just got washed away in the sea of sameness, essentially. And yet, unlike some of these forgotten pieces of media, there is now a light in that tunnel that ranchers around the internet are just finding out. August 26, 2021. KOEI TECMO makes an announcement that Monster Rancher 1 and 2 will be releasing in a bundle for the Nintendo Switch in observance of its 25th anniversary celebration. Monster Rancher 1 and 2 DX will be releasing on December 9th, 2021, marking the first Monster Rancher game to release back in the West for more than a decade. With news and nostalgia coming strong, this will only mean a new influx of fans, or a reintroduction to those that may have forgotten. And yet, the forgotten fans, the hard-working ranchers, the dedicated people who continue to play, watch, and enjoy the series for what it is, are the ones who deserve this the most. Fans promoting the series really can have unbelievable impacts on them. I am very happy to have met so many people that try so hard to keep this fan base going and are so in love with the series. Rest easy, ranchers. Rest easy and continue to teach and share for those who may want to be transported to a faraway land, to the world where monsters rule. Huge thanks to everyone that I was able to get interviews with. You were all incredibly helpful, and I've learned so much. Please be sure to check out their work in the description below, sources I'd used for this video. But just remember, they may have forgotten, but you did not. Thanks for watching.